Hello and welcome to a 5-Minute Friday episode here on Farm Traveler. We didn't have a normal interview this week because it was July 4th. Things were busy. But I wanted to do a special episode today, both here on the podcast and over on YouTube, about some really cool news that happened last week. So the USDA approved the sale of cell cultured chicken, aka like lab grown meat. And so far the two companies are Good Meat and Upside Foods. And just real quick, all the articles that I'm mentioning today will be in the description both on YouTube and on the podcast. And so I want to talk about that. So lab grown meat is going to be a thing. They're starting off with chicken. I don't know why chicken. I need to do some more research on why it's chicken and not beef. But before we get into the nitty gritty, let's talk about what exactly lab-grown meat is. So here's a great little factoid picture that I found, which if you're watching, you can see it here on YouTube. If you're on the podcast, there's a link. You can go check out the picture I'm talking about. But essentially, here's how lab-grown meat is made. You take a cell from an animal, like a cow, chicken, pig, fish, whatever. You take that cell, for example, a stem cell, and then you put it in a bioreactor. And then in that bioreactor, it's then fed nutrition, a whole bunch of just nutrients that helps it grow. And those bioreactors look like a fermentation tank at a brewery. So think of it like that. That's what it looks like. So it's in there, it grows, and then the muscle, fat, and connective tissue are then arranged to resemble meat. Now, I was talking with, I believe, Alex Shazari, from the Future Food podcast. I'll link that below. All the links are going to be below. So, but I had him on maybe 6 or 7 months ago when we talked about all this. But essentially, I believe, if I remember correctly, they have to grow the fat and the muscle tissue separately, and then they combine them because, when it comes to meat, like a steak, for example, most of the meat comes from the fat. Think of it as like a Wagyu burger or a Wagyu steak. Most of that flavor comes from the fat because Wagyu is really fatty. That's why they're so delicious. So they grow those separately and then they combine them. So that's it. It's real meat, but it's grown in a lab. Now, those animals that they take the cells from, they are fine. They can continue. Now, I think early on in lab-grown meat, in the research phases, to get the stem cells, I believe, but don't quote me, I believe that they couldn't save the animal. So each time they had to do it, they had to process the animal. I almost said sacrifice the animal, but they had to process the animal. But again, don't quote me on that. I need to do some more research on that. But now we're at a point where the animals are fine. Like they can keep continuing on their life. So you can essentially just, I don't know, go out in the wild and get a stem cell from a buffalo, and then you can have lab-grown buffalo, I think, maybe. So yeah, that's essentially how it works. And there's a lot of debate, obviously, around lab-grown meat, but one of the debates is it going to be better for the environment? So as of now, there are some studies that suggest it might be worse for the environment, but there are also a couple of studies that say long-term it could be better for the environment. But as of now, with our technology, lab-grown meat can be worse for the environment. I mean, think about all the energy that's required for the bioreactors to grow the meat, to process it, all that stuff. Now they're starting with chicken, and here's the interesting thing. They're starting with chicken instead of beef. And in terms of the meat, beef has a larger impact on the planet than chicken do. And so they're starting with chicken, and they're still talking about it's going to be better for the environment. But chicken have like a very insignificant portion of an impact. I mean, for example, there's a lot of feed we have to grow for chicken. Cows can eat a lot of food that humans can't, like a lot of corn silage that is used for like corn oils, corn, whatever it might be, and we can't eat corn silage. Like they eat a lot of leftover scraps. That's great, but that'll be interesting to see how it goes long term. Like if it can actually be potentially better for the environment, or if it's going to be worse. So if it's worse, I feel like a lot of people are going to be turned off by this. All right, so lab-grown meat. I really wanted to talk about this just real quickly because I think it'll be cool because it's another choice for consumers. Say you're a vegan, but maybe you miss steaks and you want to have a real steak instead of a cauliflower steak because a cauliflower steak is not a real steak. but you want that real steak, but you don't want to have the cruelty aspects, quote unquote, of a typical steak, you can have a lab grown steak and not have to worry about that. I think that's cool from a vegan's perspective, for example. I'm not a vegan, but I think that's cool that there's going to be more choice there for consumers. Now, if anybody at Upside Foods and the other company are listening, if I can give you any sort of advice, it is this. Please do not follow the mistakes of plant-based meats like Impossible and Beyond, because they said, and I've said this a plethora of times, the Impossible CEO said, our goal is to completely remove animal agriculture. I don't care what reality that dude is living in, that's never going to happen. You're always going to have animal agriculture. You're always going to have people that want a normal steak, that want normal chicken, that want normal fish. Like, that's always going to be a thing. So they were setting themselves up for failure, that they are going to be all encompassing. They're going to take over everything. Like, of course, they were trying to impress shareholders, and now plant-based meats are kind of going down dramatically. I feel like they were a huge trend, and now nobody really cares. But I think if lab-grown meat can just say, hey, we're a compliment, we're another choice for consumers, we want to learn and see what we can do with this and how we can save animals in the process, the environment in the process, and have something great for consumers, I think that'll be good. I think we can definitely live in a world where we can have the best of both worlds. We have lab-grown meat, we have normal meat. I think that's great. I don't think we're ever going to remove traditional animal agriculture because, not to get like super deep here, but who are we to say that we have a better understanding of the environment than the planet and we can just remove ecosystems? Like, we can remove cows, we can remove chickens, all of them from, the environment. Like, if we get to a point where we're making like lab-grown wild salmon, quote unquote, like, who are we saying like we're going to completely remove salmon from the equation, we're not going to eat it, then we're going to have like massive problems with like overpopulation of salmon, of beef, of, I don't know, reindeer, elk, like so much stuff. I don't know. I really want to get into the weeds of all this. Like, I feel like when it comes to lab-grown meat, there's kind of this element of like we're playing God a little bit, which is kind of weird. But yeah, a lot to unpack here. Please let me know in the comments if you're watching on YouTube, if you follow us on Instagram. If you're on the podcast, please go follow us on Instagram so we can have this discussion. Let me know what you think about lab-grown meat. Would you try it? Would you not try it? I ran a poll on Instagram. Only 5% of the people would try it. So I would try it because I want to see if it's different, if it's unique, if it's really close to the real thing. So let me know. Would you try it? Yes or no? So thanks so much for watching. I think this is a really cool 5-Minute Friday episode. Subscribe to the newsletter, subscribe to YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all the stuff, even the new Threads app if you want to subscribe there. And we'll be back next week with actually a brand new episode. It'll be episode 200 of the Farm Traveler podcast. So thanks for watching. We'll see you later.